we're back for another podcast. With us, we have Thomas Theiner, who, at least from our Twitter followers, a lot will have seen his activities before. He has been providing us with excellent knowledge about not just artillery, but in general, military developments in Ukraine. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me, and it's a wonderful day in Warsaw, and I love this city. I'm amazed by it.
We hope that you will be back frequently. Warsaw has also become a little bit of a hub since the war in Ukraine started. We have a lot of people coming into Warsaw, either to meet with Ukrainians or to travel further to Kiev. And I know that you have also been a lot in Ukraine previously. It's not that you have never visited the country. So when you talk about Ukraine, you usually have first-hand knowledge, either from people that you know from Ukraine or memories from your own experiences in Ukraine. So going straight to the point, when in 2022 there was this military buildup, there were many people that were speculating, will the Russians invade, will they not? Most people seem to have said that Putin couldn't be that dumb, that he's only trying to somehow blackmail the international community and the Ukrainians into making some concessions. What was your position back then? Did you believe that the Russians would invade?
Yes. It was obvious from late October that this wasn't an exercise. It was a preparation for a major invasion. The moment the Russians began to lay pipelines for fuel, make field helicopter landing spots, bring in field hospitals, build up tons of ammunition. You wouldn't need mountains of ammunition if you make an exercise or a pressure thing. And it was pretty obvious from late October that there would be an invasion, and it would not just be in the Donbass, they would go for all of Ukraine. I kept warning people. People didn't listen. It was confirmed to me from my sources at the end of November that they're looking at a major invasion. And it became so obvious. And the voices who said, no, it's not going to happen, we have to divide them into two categories, Russian spies or Russia's useful idiots. And the Ukrainians began to believe that the invasion would happen only in January and began to prepare. And what saved them, that the British Defense Secretary, Ben Wallace, probably the smartest man at the moment back then in Europe, understood that they need anti-tank weapons. And the 5,000, 6,000 NLAWs he ordered the British army to give up against the British army's will saved Kiev because the Russians just ran into a wall of anti-tank weapons. So this war was unavoidable because Putin, you can exactly see that the decision was taken to invade Ukraine in 2014, all of it. And Nord Stream 2 was the only reason Putin had to wait with his invasion a little bit, because Nord Stream 2 was finished on 29 September and on 2nd October, so 3 days later, it's now 2 years ago, the Russian military began its build-up on the borders of Ukraine. So anyone telling you that Nord Stream 2 was just a commercial project and had nothing to do with the Russian invasion of Ukraine, these people are evil. Nord Stream 2 was the precondition. This was the Hitler-Stalin pact that allowed the Russians to invade Ukraine, and everyone involved with that pipeline or promoting it is a criminal in my view.
And unfortunately, some of them still have not completely lost their standing in Germany. For example, Gerhard Schröder, who was supposed to be thrown out of the SPD party. In the end, they never did it. Manuela Schwesig, who aided the construction of the pipeline, she is the Prime Minister of Mecklenburg-Pomerania, the area Vorpommern, Mecklenburg-Vorpommern, the area or region, the state that that is where the pipeline connects with Germany, to avoid the sanctions or circumvent the U.S. sanctions. She created fake ecological societies that in reality build the pipeline. So unfortunately, for example, here in Poland, there are many people that argue that there hasn't been a complete change of heart in Germany, unfortunately, that some of these politicians who are responsible for this are still influential on the German political scene. But there are also those who say, and it has to be admitted that compared to the first month of the invasion, Germany today is delivering much more equipment. The question is, could they deliver more? And if yes, why aren't they doing it?
This is such a complicated question because we have to go back to Schröder. I know from my sources that Gerhard Schröder is actively trying to split the SPD into a pro-Russian wing and into a pro-Ukraine wing and bring down the government. So he is basically he's on behalf of Putin just trying to destroy the German government. That's why Scholz is treading so carefully, because he didn't throw out Schröder, and now Schröder is basically trying to destroy his government by taking enough SPD parliamentarians out of the coalition to force Scholz into a grand coalition with the CDU or into new elections. So Scholz is treading very carefully because he doesn't want his government to fall, and he fears what would happen in a new election in Germany, because on the right, the AfD, the basic Nazis, basically they're Nazis, they just don't use that word in Germany, and on the left, the communists and the loons that Schröder is in league with would take so many votes that it might be a problem for a German coalition government. So Scholz is treading very carefully, and so, for example, Taurus, which is an offensive weapon, is reluctant. And they're not increasing production of anything that is an offensive weapon. They have not increased production of artillery, howitzers, no increase in production of infantry fighting vehicles, no increase of production of tanks, which all things that Ukraine needs. They've increased the production of defensive systems. So Deal Defense, which makes the IRIS-T air defense system, is working overtime, full-time. They're working weekends. And Ukraine is going to get 4 more just this year, which is amazing. It's a record production level for air defense system in Germany. So the Germans could do way more. Basically, every European country west of Poland could do more, except for the Danish and the Dutch and the Brits, because the French aren't really going up in production, the Spanish don't, the Italians would like to but can't because they have the 3% limit of European spending and they're already over it. The Dutch, the Danish, all the Scandinavians, all the Eastern Europeans are doing as much as they can to help Ukraine, and the British too. The Brits are delivering an immense, let me phrase that carefully. The British are delivering parts that are extremely helpful for Ukraine and really hurtful for the Russians in Crimea. So Poland is the leader in giving equipment to Ukraine, and Germany is pretending to be on equal footing, but it's not.
Speaking about this, the famous Kiel Institute has become the institution which has provided the world with most of these graphics that are in circulation, showing how much every country has either provided or committed to Ukraine, but usually it is committed. And in recent months, this German part of it has increased enormously. So you say that this does not really reflect the reality on the ground?
It depends very much what you include in your statistics. The Kiel Institute includes also financial help, refugee help, and honestly, what the Ukrainians need right now is weapons, and more weapons and more weapons and artillery ammunition and ammunition and ammunition. Everything else is nice, but it's not gonna end this war, which we have to end as soon as possible. Because the longer it goes on, the more of Ukraine will be destroyed, and not just in cities and villages, but in human lives. Destroyed by being killed by the Russians, maimed by the Russians, also psychological traumas. And the Europeans are pretty relaxed about Ukrainians dying for us. And we would have to we need to understand, we have to do more, because we are allowing the Ukrainians to bleed out for us having a nice life. And giving the Ukrainians more weapons and increasing the production in Europe to give them more weapons, where's this money going to? Workers in Europe. The United States is spending 50 billion on weapons for Ukraine. Weapons they already have produced and would throw away at some point because they have an expiration date. So who is getting these $50 billion? American workers in hundreds of companies. So if the Germans would decide tomorrow to, yes, we should start up production of the Leopard 2A7, which is an inferior tank to the K2 that the Polish bought in South Korea. But still, if the Germans would start production of that one, the Ukrainians would love it. Yes, the Ukrainians would get tanks from the German as a present, but all the money goes to German workers. So what's there not to like? The Ukrainians get the equipment they need to win at less human losses, and German workers are the ones to profit from that. But since there is a guy that takes orders from Moscow trying to split the German governing coalition, the Germans aren't doing anything. The French are anyway not doing anything. They're just like along for the ride. And Spain and Italy are too broke to really get into massive production. So Poland and the US, the UK and the Danish, what have these countries in common? Zloty, kroner, pound, dollar. They aren't in the Eurozone. They don't have a 3% spending limit that severely hampers countries like Italy and Spain that could produce weapons for Ukraine.